scratch my nose. Anyways, thank you all for being here. So glad for you all to be here while we go over just a few things this week at our weekly press conference. First, just a reminder that next Tuesday, the council is slated to adopt the 2022-2023 budget. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the highlights, but first I want to thank everyone in the public who has had an opportunity to reach out to us to help us really focus this budget towards what people are expecting out of our city, and also to ensure that it matches the values of our community. One of the things I've learned in government over the past 8 or 9 years is that budgets are a reflection of our priorities. It's a reflection of our values. And I'm really happy about this budget because it has a lot of great stuff in it, and it's because we've had folks who have been willing to step up, step out, and give us feedback on that. So with that, some of the stuff that we can go over is recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic is ongoing. Revenue forecasts for sales tax, charges for services, motor fuel tax, franchise fees, and other revenues are trending upward. Of course, in the beginning when we had to cut the budget, we took into account that those projections were going to fluctuate. Right now, they seem to be returning in a almost, I mean, I don't want to get a knock on wood, right? Almost a pre-pandemic number there. The mill levy has remained unchanged. This is the 28th consecutive year that we haven't touched the mill levy, so that's going to remain stable. Funding from the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, or as we call it, ARPA, has allowed $72.4 million to be allocated to the city of Wichita. We're using that to fill vacant positions, and we will continue to reinstate the services that were cut in 2020 and restore some of those services, which is really just in time, because I think we're starting to see folks notice that some of those services that had to be cut last year need to be addressed. So building back from the cuts from last year, we're starting to do that first and foremost by getting our staffing levels back to where they used to be. And with that, I also want to mention that we don't just want to bring us back as a city government to where we were pre-pandemic, but actually build back even better than where we were. So when it comes to staff and investing in our staff, we're happy to have all of our staff who are being called back, all the new jobs that we are looking for people to fill. Those will be starting at a base pay of $15 an hour, which is the livable wage. So with that, we want to not just get back to where we were, but make sure that we are a place that folks can really feel valued working for. So quality of life are combined. Some of the things we're doing for quality of life is combining the cultural arts and parks and recreation departments. We believe this will help improve coordination and provide better services to residents who participate in these activities. There is a lot of crossover with some of these activities, so the goal is to streamline and to complement some of these programs so that we can provide better services. We're also looking into contracting Century 2 with a management company that would bring some of the expertise to enhance the customer experience by using best practices and reducing the city costs, which will allow us to have more money to add into some of that deferred maintenance and some of the maintenance that might be coming up. We also are looking towards $163 million over the next 10 years for street pavement maintenance, and that total annual funding will rise from $11 million in 2022 to $20 million by 2031. Our fire optimization incentives are funded. The fire department uses data to optimize deployment of staff and equipment and to improve response times. Funding is also included to retain the 12 previously grant-funded positions. Those will now be full-time positions, so we're adding 12 full-time firefighters into this budget. And the optimization software is very interesting. It allows the chief to utilize pretty much real-time data over a course of of months where they can continuously analyze what parts of the city need what services from our fire department, so that they can not only get the most out of the location of our stations, but also the trucks and the type of staff that each area might specifically need at certain times. So to support public safety, $120 million is included for capital projects. This includes funding for fire trucks and related equipment, new fire stations and equipment, and facility upgrades. There's also funding to replace 4 police substations, which is something, if you've been following along with our workshops, is something that we've been discussing quite at length. And we have $42 million that will be used to fund projects to enhance livability of Wichita. These projects include a rebuild community center for McAdams Park, the completion of the aquatics master plan, branch library improvements, the Clapp Park master plan improvements, enhancements to South Lakes Park, and improvements to the cultural facilities. As we build back with some of these resources, we want to make sure that we put them back into the stuff that I think folks are really looking towards getting utilizing. Now, hopefully we get post-pandemic. I got to knock on wood again. But getting back to some of the stuff that people really enjoy in Wichita and making sure those improve. So with that, that's just a brief overview of the budget. Of course, some of the highlights, we do have some budget staff with us. There are folks towards the end who have questions about anything specific with the budget. But again, I've been in elected office for a long time. Last year, when we had to cut millions of dollars out of the budget, we did so with the anticipation that there wouldn't be any federal funds to help us through, because at that time we couldn't move forward responsibly unless we knew for a sure thing it would be. So we had to really cut back last year, and then this year being able to, thanks to the ARPA funds, being able to build back the budget and build back the services. We're very fortunate here in Wichita that we can get us to where we were, but also have some money to put it in community investments as well. So next we're going to talk briefly about the Sustainability Board. So last Tuesday, we discussed a proposal for the Sustainability Board. As folks who've been following our meetings have noticed, we've had a lot of people from the community come and want us to look towards more sustainability type projects here in Wichita. And one of the main questions has been, can we get a sustainability board, a group of folks who could help advise the council on the best practices and policies moving forward? We reached out to Wichita State University, who presented staff with a variety of options that are considered best practices. And our current proposal reflects some of the best practices for these sustainability boards. However, there are folks in the activist community who have been very passionate about this topic, who asked us to somewhat pump the brakes a little bit on voting for it, so that they have a chance to review it and to provide feedback. As I think most folks who follow government know, it's the best policies we have are the ones that have shareholders and the community have a stake in them, and we get feedback from them so we can make any adjustments. So we have held back on that policy right now. We look forward to taking it back up after the budget, and we want to encourage anyone who has feedback on that ordinance to please email myself or email council so that we can incorporate that feedback. Just another update about the ethics in the land bank boards. We are still looking for folks who might want to serve on these boards. Please fill out your application online, and I think it's a 2-year term. Two-year terms is the maximum. So it's not a huge commitment, but we know we have a lot of folks in our community who do look for opportunities to share their talents with the city, to serve our community, and these are 2 ways you could do that. One would be serving on the ethics board and also a land bank board. So to see a list of qualifications or to apply, please visit wichita.gov, and it'll be under the board's link. We also have an update on sand volleyball. So our Parks and Recreation Department would like to invite anyone interested to join the Fall Sand Volleyball League. So check out wichita.gov/evolve to look at the times to sign up with yourself or with the team. It is a way to serve up some fun this fall. That was good, Megan. So with that, we can take questions.
The fact that you're bringing people back in that were, I guess, laid off, or so having everybody vaccinated, is that part of the reason? And are you concerned about the variant? That is kind of showing its ugly face, so to speak.
Yeah, the variant has really, as folks who are following this COVID, the variant has, the Delta variant in particular has really put a drag on our recovery. We are seeing hospitals reaching a critical state right here in Wichita. Our friends over at the county health department, I think, are doing everything they can to get accurate information out, and we are ready to come alongside them when it comes to ensuring that our citizens are as safe as possible. When it comes to having services and bringing people back in, we are following guidelines to keep our employees safe. We have been following, the guidelines of health experts the entire time when it came to COVID, and we stand ready to implement, whatever advice our medical community and our Board of Health suggest in order to keep our employees safe, and also those who visit here. I'm really proud of our staff in a way they adapted during COVID, utilizing some of our assets like Century 2 so that we wouldn't have, we would allow for public discussion at Century 2 that would be live broadcast in the council chamber while allowing people to be socially distant. And if we have to resort back to some of those measures to keep people safe, we'll make sure to do so. With that, I do want to just put in just a plug about our vaccines are still, according to the data, still holding up against this variant. The White House and the, I believe it's the CDC, maybe the FDA, one of them has recommended that there will be 8 months after your second dose of one of Pfizer or Moderna we might need a booster shot as well. And I just read an article about what's happening in Israel, where they were one of the most vaccinated countries when it came to the Pfizer, but they're seeing a bit of a spike, particularly with people who have more weakened immune systems, and as the immunity somewhat is wearing down. I mean, I think it was went from 96% to somewhere in the 80s, so it's still really good, but weaning down just a little bit. So we are trying to stay ahead of some of the crisis we might see throughout the world by recommending folks get a booster shot.
What's your concern level with the hospitals going into the red status?
I'm incredibly concerned as mayor about this, and I'll just tell you, this is a little bit outside of the lane of what the city focuses on. We come alongside our health department, who's over at the county level, but we of course, it's the city of Wichita. We all care about our neighbors here. One of the issues when it comes to our hospitals reaching critical status is that if you don't have COVID and you still need a physician, you might not get that service you need right away. That's one of the things we saw in the very beginning of the pandemic when we were talking about flattening the curve. We're seeing somewhat of a need to flatten that curve again. What we know is this Delta variant is incredibly contagious, and it's actually even more damaging than the original virus we talked about last year. So we have to take different precautions this year. We can't make today's decisions based off last year's understanding of COVID. So with that, we want to ensure that folks know how to protect themselves. That's using not just masks, but good masks. That's making sure you're vaccinated. That's the number one tool to protect yourself against COVID right now is preventative measures, which is vaccination. The medical community has already put out that, or has mentioned in different articles, that the treatment of COVID is just not at the level as prevention is. So we really, if we're going to have this disease, spread through our community, which it seems to be doing, the advice is to make sure that you are prepared for it by vaccinating yourself and trying to encourage others. And if you're still on the fence about a vaccine, the recommendation that I tell people is, you don't have to listen to me. Call your doctor. Call the person you trust when you are ill, or that you bring your children to when they are ill, and ask them if you're a good candidate for the vaccine. You can walk into any pharmacy at all right now and get a vaccine. We're incredibly privileged here in this country, in our community, while other parts of the world right now just don't have that privilege. So please protect yourself, and that is our way forward with this, is to ensure that we knock down the curve and that folks have the information they need to make the right decisions for themselves. Hopefully that will lead to preventative measures such as vaccination.
How much is the city receiving in ARPA funds again?
72.5 million is what we're at currently. 72.4 million, excuse me.
Are you required, what kind of requirements or guidelines do you have to follow? Are you limited on what you can spend those funds on?
Yeah, it's not a blank check. It's definitely, strings attached, it's definitely limited, but luckily we have Mark here who lives in this world, so he could probably give us a better response more specifically. But yeah, many of them are targeted, and we have some that are more specific than others. So with that, I'll let Mark address that question.
Yes, sir. There are a variety of federal rules and regulations responding or referring to the ARPA funding, but generally they're for a couple strategies, and that is particularly to address areas of the community that have been particularly hard hit by the virus, and even more specifically, specific populations within the community that have been impacted by the virus. So a lot of the dollars the city has, I think, will be directed towards strategies that will improve conditions for certain populations and in certain areas of the city. We're also allowed to use it, as the mayor mentioned earlier, to restore government services and to supplement our hiring so that we can restore government services. So some of the ARPA funding will also be directed towards that. And then finally, I think another component that the mayor may have mentioned is we will also use some of the ARPA funding, again, consistent with regulations, to fund capital improvements within the city, particularly in the public safety area.
So does that fall under the same line as the company that I guess you hired to oversee Century 2? So would that be?
No, I don't think ARPA will have any association with the proposal to privatize management of Century 2.
Ask the mayor.
Century 2 actually falls under, it may be.
Oh, could we get your name?
Look at Mark take off. The Century. Of course. Yeah, Mark, stand by, Mark. The Century 2. So this ARPA is specific, and then we have COVID relief funds, which are different. That also went into a lot of our homeless prevention programs, and then you also have other more specific funds that we are able to utilize to help us get out of this crisis. One of them, I think, was Century 2 that Mark might be able to comment on if there's further questions, is the venue money coming down from the shuttered venue grant that comes in. Century 2, we voted a couple of weeks ago, I believe, on approving those monies to come in with that. But as far as moving forward with privatizing the management of Century 2, that's something that was actually voted on last budget. So it's something that's been in the works before ARPA even passed, and it was just at that point, I actually voiced concerns against it. And since then, I think we are moving towards a program that will not only get the most out of Century 2, but also still allow Century 2 to be a resource to our nonprofit community and to our local organizations as well. So we're marching towards that shared goal there. But to your immediate question, Century 2, if you look at the funding, we are looking towards the shuttered venue opportunities for that, for Century 2 in specific. You got more, Mark? Yeah, he has questions for you.
Is there a time frame that you have to or spend those funds?
Yes, sir. The ARPA funds are available for 4 years, so they'll be able to be spent through 2024, as we understand it.
Okay. And then with respect to the money that you'll use to replace or for hiring positions, are those full-time permanent positions?
Yes, sir, for the most part.
Okay. Well, this is probably a question for you. After those 4 years, that funding goes away, how will you incorporate that back into the budget, the regular budget?
So we're trying to be very smart when it comes to utilizing one-time federal funds. And the smart way to do stuff is to look towards meeting the immediate need. The reason why it's a 4-year time limit on spending this is so that we can kind of get that shot in the arm, no pun intended, for restarting the economy after the pandemic. So with that, we are looking for ways to meet those needs while having an investment that rewards us with other opportunities after those 4 years. Good example of this is the 316 Hotel, for example, something we talked about quite a bit, where instead of just utilizing money that was designed to pay for our hotel rooms to help our families who are experiencing homelessness, instead we went and bought a hotel. So while we can use the money for what it's designated for, once that program is over, we still have the asset. And then by utilizing that asset with our nonprofit community who are the experts in this field, they now have that asset as well, and can provide services beyond 2024. So we are looking.
I'm talking about employees, not so much services.
So a lot of the money, and Mark can help me out with this, but a lot of the money to build back our services with the employees, a lot of that was based off the money we lost. So we usually don't bring employees on unless there is also the part of our long-term strategy. So I don't believe we're bringing on any temporary employees. When we do bring on temporary employees, we actually use a contract format. We don't bring them on as full-fledged employees. And one of the things that Mark has shown us through our presentations of the budget is our employees are actually one of the largest expense that the city has. So we're very cautious. We want to treat our employees right and make sure that working for the city is a great job, but also we're not interested in hiring people full-time just for a few years. So utilizing these monies for that, I don't think, that's our intent is to keep our full-time employees beyond, 2024. Is that about right, Mark?
You're exactly right, Mayor.
Okay, I don't get that a lot. Did you guys hear that? He said I'm exactly right. All right.
I have one more question. The 4 substations, is that a lot of it, Wichita's kind of growing? I'm sure West Side is one of them in particular. Is that what you're looking at?
Are you talking about the police substations or the fire? So we utilize best practices when it comes to determining where our substations will be located. Back in the day, you hear stories, and don't fact check me on this because I haven't fact checked it, but you hear about substations or certain places and distance apart based on how far a horse can go without having to get watered, right? Like, so sometimes when you look at older cities, there's not, you have these stations out there and they're not, the distancing or the spacing of it was based on a different logic than what we would use today. So when it comes to our substations, we are looking not only for putting these towards communities and areas where we think we get the most bang for our buck, but also taking into account stuff like how far away are different areas of town from the substation, like how close is it from our major highways, also how far away is it from places to get gasoline to fill up our cruisers and so on. And with our real-time study that the fire chief is utilizing, it's going to allow us to really get a better understanding of today's needs when it comes to addressing fires, and that's going to have an impact on our substations, on how we staff them, and best usage of our resources.
You mentioned fire, so I guess fire and police are different though.
They are different, yes, but I do want to point out that we are looking to either redo some fire stations or add more stations to both fire and police.
So put them in basically maybe together or nearby.
Yeah, they all come out of the CIP, or most of them. Getting nervous with the budget people here. Out of the CIP, so they actually come out of the same fund. But the strategy is similar, is we want to put our substations where they make the most sense and where they make the most impact, rather that is fire or if it's police.
Did you mention hiring more police officers? I know you did fire, so.
We did. I think we have 7 more police officers coming in and 2 social service professionals as well. So our officers have more resources if they approach a situation where a social service professional would be a better fit for that situation than a traditional officer.
Kind of seeing more of that right now anyway. So.
Yeah, modern cities are really implementing more social service resources and professionals into the community policing plan. Our current budget will fund the police study all the way up to that second phase. So we have more resources, more officers on the streets, more integrated services at any time in Wichita's history. Is that it? You guys sure? You guys came with some questions today. All right. Is there anything that staff would like to add to any of this? All right. So with that, thanks a lot, everyone. And just last shameless plug, feel free to join us between now and next week or at next week's meeting if you have input on a budget. We are still collecting that input and making sure that there is, everyone's voice is heard when it comes to this. Thank you.